Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, Mr. Beast's sidekick, Chris, is now claiming to be a woman. We talked about this a few episodes ago, but we have to look at it again. Mr. Beast is one of, if not the most influential YouTubers around, especially for teens. And Chris has been on the channel since the beginning. Now, Chris says he is a woman. Not feels like, not dresses like, is a woman. We'll look at some of the cultural implications of this and why this story matters. Meanwhile, Al Sharpton is really mad about Trump and compares J6 to the American Revolution, kind of by accident. We'll talk about that. It's an interesting, maybe funny story. In social media news, a breast cancer patient in Oregon was kicked out of her treatment because she posted on social media about some of the LGBTQAIP things. Yep, we're now at the point where what you post online can stop you from getting medical treatment. That's where we are as a country. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public again. I am Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and I am here just trying to help you understand how to live your faith and live it in a way that is helpful to you in all situations, right? It's easy for us to maybe be faithful at home, be faithful at church, but more and more this world is saying that's where it has to stay. You're not allowed to be faithful, to be religious on social media. You're not allowed to be faithful or religious at work or at school. But if you follow Jesus, and as he says, love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, that means everywhere. So how do we do that? Everywhere. And that's the thing that I want to help you with using current events, because the reality is you're going to run into some of these things the more and more that we go through this world. These types of issues are going to pop up no matter where you are, no matter how conservative the place you live is or not. These things are going to start coming up, and we need to understand how to live in light of them. All right, so let's just go ahead and begin. This was an interesting clip that I saw floating around. This is an interesting story. This is Al Sharpton, who is complaining about Trump. He was indicted for the 732nd time. I'm not going to talk much about that. There are other and smarter people who have talked all about the indictment and what is going on with it, though it really feels kind of banana republic-y to me. If you need more information on that, go and check out some of the other people that have talked about it. What I want to point out in this clip is, well, I guess I'll just say some people need to read more history, which, of course, is a topic that I love. Let's listen to this, and then we'll talk about it.
One day, our children's children will read American history. And can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at American history.
You mean... Sorry. You mean the Thomas Jefferson who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Something about overthrowing a government, something about declaring independence from the tyrannical government of England and the tyrannical King George, and literally starting a revolution called the Revolutionary War. And James Madison, famously involved in the whole process, penned a bunch of the Federalist Papers and on and on. Some people need to spend more time reading history rather than complaining about it. Anyway, that's all I really want to say about that. The Declaration. Who doesn't love the Declaration of Independence? But apparently some people don't know it exists. I really don't even know what to say about this anymore. All right, let's jump to I think this is an interesting story, and I'm always looking for cultural relevance and things that we can talk about from a Christian perspective to see what is going on in society. And this is an interesting one to me. So there is a study that just came out that says high school boys are becoming more conservative. Again, if you're just listening, I love you. Thank you so much. If you want to see some of these videos, go to churchpublic.com, hit the subscribe, hit the like button, hit all those buttons. Anyway, this is a little chart. University of Michigan has been doing a study on high schoolers for years and years and years. So this is 12th grade boys. 12th grade boys are nearly twice as likely to identify as conservative versus liberal, according to this federal survey of American youth. Annual surveys of the last 3 years, roughly 1/4 of high school seniors self-identified as conservative or very conservative. 13% only, 13% identified as liberal or very liberal. This is very interesting. Isn't this very interesting? I mean, because what we're seeing in culture broadly is that it is just wildly liberal, a crazy level of liberal. And yet, boys seem to be going the other way. Now, to some, this was surprising. I read some articles where this was just a surprising, why are these boys becoming more conservative? To me, it's not surprising at all. Boys are turning against the system that continuously, constantly says they are bad. They say boys are bad, men are bad, masculinity is bad, the patriarchy is bad, everything about them is bad. So what do? They go to places that say, actually, no, boys can be good or bad. And manliness is actually good. Conservatism says, hey, men are not inherently bad. They can be used, they can have bad traits, they can have good traits, they can choose to be good. And I would add another layer on there, of course, Christian conservatism. Christian following would say that that through Christ, not on their own, of course, Romans, I'm not eliminating that, but they can be good. They're not just inherently bad, as the system, as the schools, as everybody is telling them that they can be. So to me, it's this idea of boys will be boys. Boys are real. Boys like to play. Boys like to do things that are less virtual. Sure, I know there's all these stories about boys just going out and being stuck in their basements and doing all this other stuff, but boys really like to do things. This is just a reality of boys. They are more physical. Boys, and this culture is virtual. This whole culture is virtual. The whole thing, the whole meta, the whole social media, the whole virtual world is trying to be more and more virtual. And boys are saying, no, I want to be more real. Boys want to take on the risk. They want to push back against the culture. And the culture is focused on just terrible things. This whole debauched ideology of do whatever you want and whatever. And boys are saying, no, I don't want to. I want to do something better. And they're becoming more conservative. I love this. And ultimately, to me, these numbers aren't surprising at all. Modern education is dominated by progressive ideology. I've shown you time and time and again all kinds of other things. And this ideology usually states at least two, there's many things, but I'll give these very two things against boys. Girls are good, boys are bad. That's what the ideology in schools are saying. This is one of the main points of modern American progressive ideals, that girls are good and boys are bad. And so this is the idea that boys are saying, well, then I'm going to turn to somewhere else that I can thrive. And conservatism is that place. Now, there are problems with conservatism, of course. I'm not pointing to all of the joys of liberalism. I don't think that's necessarily a thing, but real conservatism in the sense of Christianity, especially if it's founded in reality and in the reality of Christianity, I think there's a lot of room for boys to be boys. And we need to find that, and we need to get that. And I guess it's just another place where I can also insert, get your kids out of government schools. All right, let's move to another story that I found super interesting. Lauren Daigle, great voice. Some of her theology and practice is a little bit weird for me, but I love this post that she did. Now, I have talked at length about the Sound of Freedom movie. That was in a couple episodes back. You can go and listen to that if you want. I loved it in the sense that, like, it makes you really upset, but it makes you upset for the right reasons, right? It makes you upset to say, how is this happening to children and how can we help this situation? I went through a long thing. I'm not going to go through it again. How Hollywood and the mainstream media, politicians, celebrities are just pretending this movie is weird. It doesn't exist. It's a whole conspiracy that the movie is even real, which, by the way, again, it's based on Tim Ballard and his real life story. Sure, they take liberties, but it's based on the real story of what he did. There's actually, if you watch the movie and stay till the end of the movie, they show the literal video footage from scenes in the movie, not the movie scenes, but the real scenes, the real life things that he did to save these children. So it's real. And I just love this because Lauren Daigle came out and said, hey, why is this even controversial? I probably won't play this whole clip, but we'll start it and then go from there.
So I went to see the movie Sound of Freedom, and I have a lot of thoughts. So I want to sit here and go through some things I found very interesting. One thing I found very interesting is that people are having to defend this movie. This is insane to me that this would even be something that needs to be defended. Children being harmed should never be something we question that we need to defend or not. Here's the thing about cinema. Cinema has been used for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, and as long
I'm just going to go ahead and pause it there. I mean, she goes on for a bit, but ultimately that's the main point, right? The main point is, why is this controversial? That human trafficking is real. It's really happening. And a lot of that is kids and kids being put into slavery and sex slavery. And why is this controversial at all? It shouldn't be controversial at all. We should all want to help the children get out of this. And it's probably worse than you think it is. That's what this movie illustrates. And those that understand, it's way worse than you think it is. So it shouldn't be controversial at all. But for some reason, in this weird upside down world that we're in, this is controversial. People want to celebrate all kinds of things and all kinds of debauchery and Pride Month for days and days and days and Pride Year and all these parades with all kinds of debauched lifestyle. But the fact that children are actually being sold into slavery and sex slavery, yeah, we can't talk about that. This is a crazy world that we live in. And this, again, from a Christian perspective, we need to understand that when you uncover real life things that are real issues that affect real people, the enemy doesn't like it. The world doesn't like it because the enemy is dealing with this. Again, we say this a lot here, but the reality is, as we read in Ephesians, some of the other places in the New Testament, we are not in a battle of flesh and blood. We're in a spiritual battle. Some of the things you can see, some of the things you cannot see. And this is one of those things that we're in a battle for lives, for souls, and we need to take that seriously. Again, read through Ephesians 5, Ephesians 6 for more information on that straight from God. You should definitely get into that. All right, let's continue on and talk about a couple other things here. Because we'll spend a little bit of time at the end talking about Chris and Mr. Beast. I kind of went back and forth on whether we were going to do that topic today, but I think we're going to. And the reason is, we'll get to it in a second. The reason that I really want to talk about it is it makes me sad. It makes me sad because of what he has chosen and the reasons that he has chosen to do this. And so I'm not even going to single him out specifically. I want to use this story as an illustration of what apparently a lot of people in America are going through, and the deception, again, talking about spiritual battles, the deception that is going on in the world, and the thing that we need to watch out for, pray for people that are dealing with things like this. But before we get there, I want to talk about another story, and this comes out of Oregon. There is a patient who was kicked out of a clinic after complaining about one of the alphabet flags. So story here is that an Oregon woman is battling breast cancer. She says she was dropped by her primary care doctor because her response to the display of a transgender flag in the doctor's office. Miss Barbara, who was scheduled to have a mastectomy later this month, was informed by the Oregon Health Science University that she was dropped from the clinic due to alleged comments she made about the office's LGBT employees and staff. Here's just her message and one of the things that she was given. It says, "This letter is to inform you that effective immediately, you are discharged from receiving medical care at the Richmond Family Medical Clinic." It goes on and on. She says, "You are also dismissed from all CHSU family medicine clinics." Again, it goes on and on. This just makes me sad. It makes me a little bit frustrated. And the reason is, right, she had posted that she didn't appreciate the religious symbols, and I'm going to keep referring to them as that because this is how it operates. You must bow down to these religious symbols, and when you do not, then even in this case, right, you don't get medical treatment. Barbara shared her letter to the conservative social channel Libs of TikTok. We've talked about them before. That's a social media poster who posts some of the interesting things that happen on the interwebs and things that are recorded. So Barbara raised concerns about a, quote, enormous transgenderism banner hanging like a Nazi flag behind the reception desk. Now, I am not a fan of Nazi comparisons. And the reason I'm not a fan is everything can be compared to that. And it's overbroad and overused, and we shouldn't say things like that. I think that's a mistake on her part. However, from this religious perspective, this is how it operates. I don't believe she talked to the clinic. It doesn't feel like that. It looks like she posted on social media. So here are my takeaways, right? They say you can have your religion, maybe your silly little religion, but you can't talk about it. You can't talk about it in real life. You can't talk about it on social media. And now you may be denied medical care if you don't agree with their religion. If you don't bow down to the flag, then you can't operate in this world. Again, if you're just listening, I'm going to show this one again because this is the flag, and this is superimposed on the image that Nebuchadnezzar had put out. And this is Rack, Shack, and Benny. And there's even a guy who's saying, like, quick, bow down. And they're like, no. We're not going to bow down to you. We're not going to bow down to anybody. And that's how we have to act as Christians. We have to understand that we're living in a different world than we thought we were. Conservatives, Christians, we're constantly compared to this Handmaid's Tale, but I don't know of anyone anywhere in America right now that will block you from a hospital if you don't salute the Christian flag, for instance. Does anybody even know? Did you even know there is a Christian flag? Most people don't even know that exists. That's how far from reality this is. In fact, if you burn the American flag, you may get a TV commercial and a media deal. We've seen those things happen. So if you disrespect certain things in this culture, conservative things, historical things, traditional things, you get accolades. But if you disrespect something that they revere, their flag, you get kicked out of your job. You maybe get kicked out of medical care, definitely get kicked off of social media. And these are things that we've got to take into consideration. We have to understand this is the world that we're living in, which is why I think it's so important that we understand current events from a Christian perspective. We need to understand that this world is going to be coming against us as Christians because this word of God is offensive. The reason it's offensive is it tells you you're not sufficient on your own. You can't make it on your own. And this world is giving you a lot of pressure. This is the sad part to me, right? The world is giving a lot of pressure to young men, young women, especially saying, you need to be something different than you are. You need to change who you are. And in order to change who you are, you need to have medical treatments and surgical treatments because you're not good enough in yourself. Now, the Word of God says something similar. You're not good enough in yourself, Romans 3:23. However, the solution is to find Jesus, be given a new heart, be born again into the Spirit of God, into Christianity, into following Jesus, repent from your old ways, change your old ways, and now go in a new way following after Jesus. This is the actual solution, the spiritual solution to a spiritual problem, not the physical solution to a spiritual problem, right? You see the difference? And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people just think are not seeing the difference. They're not understanding that they're trying to find a physical solution, medical, surgical, to a spiritual problem. And that's what makes me really sad. And that's why I think it will be important for us to spend a few minutes here going through Chris from Mr. Beast, because he is a guy who, Mr. Beast, again, I think is one of the most, if not the most famous YouTuber on the planet. I mean, he's just so famous, especially for teenagers, especially for teenage boys. And Chris, with a CH, has been with him for the whole time. Now it's Chris with a K, by the way. We may get to that if we have time and we get through these. But we need to look at some of this interview. This is a July interview with Smosh's Anthony Padilla. Chris Tyson said that this treatment saved, this is according to CNN, her life. Again, Chris is still a man because you can't actually change from man to woman, but this is the world that we're in, trying to find physical solutions to spiritual problems. And that's what makes me sad. I'm sad for him. I'm sad because the path that he has taken to try to find happiness, peace, joy, acceptance has led him into a place that unfortunately is not going to give him what he has hoped for. So let's look at a couple of these clips. I may skip a little bit. I may pause a little bit, but I think it's important for us to go through. So let's go ahead and go through.
Yeah, I feel like about maybe 6 months to a year ago, I started to see a change in your appearance.
Yes.
You started to look a little bit less masculine, a little bit less beardy.
Yeah.
At the exact same time, you look like you were glowing, like you were more excited, like your
Yeah.
posture was better, like you were like excited
I was
about
happy.
life. Yeah, it was weird. I didn't realize how unhappy you looked beforehand.
Yeah, a
Looking
lot
up
of
old
people
pictures
did.
of you, I searched old pictures of you, and you could see a
There was
dramatic
smile.
shift.
Let's pause for a second and pick up on that, right? So the problem here is apparently he was wildly unhappy. And that makes me sad. I mean, it's sad that he was so unhappy. It is a good point to point out too. He is married, was married, I guess it's not anymore, and has a young son. And through all of this, apparently being a dad, being a husband, that was not satisfying. And he was very unhappy with his life. And this is the path and the solution of that. Let's keep going.
But it wasn't a real smile. It was a performance smile. I mean, cause like, was I sad every single day during those times? No, but like in the back of my head, it was something I constantly felt like I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being true to the people who are fans of me because I was hiding my true self from them. And the thing that was really keeping me for so long away from like who I truly am is how people would react. I was so scared of like, I'm from a small town in a conservative area. So when I was younger, I was like, this little bubble is my entire world. How will they react? Then I got a little older. I was like, maybe one day. And then I got famous and my bubble went from this small little town to hundreds of millions of people.
You've had a lot of people speculating on your gender.
Yes.
You know, just you growing out your hair.
Yeah.
I mean, today you showed up fully
I did.
presenting
I did.
as a woman.
I did because I am a woman.
Oh, shit!
Ah, she, her.
You've never said that before, right?
I've never said that publicly, no. But
Again, let's just pause there and take a moment and kind of process through this, because this is it, right? So he says, because I now am a woman. This is the presence of being. In reality, he's saying he is a woman. He has literally changed from man to woman. Again, this is really sad, because I'm sad for the pain that apparently he went through, the pain and loss that's going on. I also can't stop thinking about the pain that his, I guess now ex-wife is going through, the pain that his son is going through, because this guy is really confused and there's a lot going on here. Let's keep going and talk about it a little bit more.
I came out to myself with my therapist, and it took like 3 therapy sessions where I was like, I've known this for a long time. I'm pretty sure. And then I was, I know and then I was like, I am a woman. And it was hard for me to say that because I was so scared of saying I am a woman and then instantly hearing, no, you're not. Because in my head, I fought with that every day.
That's the conversation you were having with yourself.
There was a voice in the back of my head that just hated me. Everything I did hated me. And it wasn't until like I started accepting myself and being kind to others and like just listening to what my body wanted. Like that's when that voice started going away. Started taking HRT. Haven't heard from that voice in a very long time.
Where do you think that part of you has gone?
I hope it's locked away.
Do you think it's disappeared?
Oh yeah.
Let's go ahead and pause there again and just say it's really sad again. It's really sad because, he's hearing the voice, and I would say the true voice, the true voice of, hey, this isn't you. But he decided, hey, I'm going to go the other way. And I'm just going to say, no, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I want to do rather than what my wife wants me to do, my kid wants me to do, the way I'm actually made, the way, and I don't know where this guy is spiritually. So I can't judge in that way. I can't judge from a Christian perspective, but we do need to look at this from the perspective of there's a lot of people who are struggling with this. And Christians are going to run into this person, this type of thing, and try to figure out what's going on. And the reason this is important for you is if you have kids, teenagers, teenage boys especially, I'm almost certain, have watched Mr. Beast. They probably have seen Chris from a guy perspective, and now he's presenting in a different perspective. He's dressing like a woman, and acting in this way. And he says, I am a woman. It's not just pretend. In his mind, he has really physically changed, emotionally changed, spiritually changed. And this is where life is now. Let's keep going on a little bit more.
More and more true to yourself.
I've always been myself. I'm now taking steps to make sure I'm the best and happiest version, because there was a point in my life where, and a lot of people thought that was the best version of me because that's the only thing they had ever seen, Chris from Mr. Beast. But I was very unhappy, and I was tired, and I was miserable.
Again, it makes me so sad that he was so unhappy and so tired and so miserable. That really is sad. It really is tragic that he got to that place. And it's sad to me as well that the conclusion, the response, the solution that he had to this is, I'm going to change from a man into a woman. That's the solution here. And it makes me really sad. Let's watch a little more of this clip.
And now I'm I wake up every day and I'm like, what are we doing today? I wake up at 7:30. I used to wake up at 11:30 every single day.
Do you wake up with excitement?
So again, going from sadness to happiness, I'm glad that he's happy now, but the reality, and we'll look at some scripture in a minute, because the reality is this happiness is not going to last. This happiness is not going to actually satisfy, because he's drawing his happiness from a choice. And unfortunately, that choice is not backed by reality, spirituality, biology. And that choice then is going to run into real life consequences. And it will probably sooner than later. And this is one of those moments where you can try to mask unhappiness with certain things. But the reality is you can't find your way through this by trying to change who you really are. As he mentioned, I presented as my best self, who I really was, but then I decided who I really am, and now I am who I really am. But that's not who God made you. Again, we're going back to Genesis. We're going back to Genesis 1. God created you. We're going back to some of the Psalms, Jeremiah. We're going to these places where God knew you before you were born. God created you in a certain way. God did not make a mistake in you. And yet it's really sad that this is the solution that you have come up with. I think I have one more quick clip and then we'll end up.
I have no shame with who I was. I think it's so cool and interesting that it's I was Chris with a CH, and then I put that to rest, and now I can finally be Chris with a K. You
have a permanent archive of who you were and your transitional period and who you are now.
Literally, it's kind of like the Mr. Beast channel was accidentally my trans timeline.
It was a documentary about the transition, right?
You didn't know it.
Yeah.
I was using him.
So you've changed the way you present, you've changed the name and the things that you prefer people to call you, you've changed your pronouns.
Yeah.
Have you changed your voice? Because I know that's something that trans people also work toward.
Okay, we'll hear from the voice in a second, but I just needed to pause there and say, again, because I was kind of familiar with Mr. Beast and I was kind of familiar with this whole situation before this happened, and I had seen him on many videos. He sounds the same then as he does now. So this is an interesting question from the interviewer. The question is, have you changed your voice? The obvious answer right here is no, because you can hear it. If you've seen any of the old Mr. Beast videos, you know he sounds exactly the same. I would say, and this may be offensive, he looks exactly the same. I don't think he looks different. I think it just looks like he has long hair and now he's wearing a dress and heels. He doesn't look different. And that's the hard reality, right? The hard reality of biology, physicality. Like, you can even do surgeries and hormones and other things, but you kind of are who you are. I mean, really, you are who you are. And that's the hard and sad truth of this that we'll get to in a minute. Scripturally, this isn't going to make him happy. It isn't going to ultimately fulfill, because the things that he's using to fill his cup, the things that he's using to say, these make me happy now, are things that don't last, are things that can't last. So this voice thing is an interesting thing because your voice is part of who you are. And sure, sometimes voices change, sometimes things happen. That's how it is. This goes back to, I mean, we looked at Dr. Richard Robert Rachel Levine the other day, who said, what if you go through the wrong puberty? And as a person who is a man and who has a rather low voice, my voice changed. I'm watching my sons now and hearing their voices change. This is biology. This is what happens. You can't go through the wrong puberty. You are who you are. Your DNA, your chromosomes, they change your voice. This is just what happens. So now what we're going to see is the question that came, did you change your voice? Obviously, until this moment, the answer was no. But now we're going to hear what the next part is. Let's take a listen.
I am working on it. So currently, I'm working with the Seattle Voice Labs. It's a Discord server where they offer free lessons, they offer paid lessons, but Claire, she is incredible. She's been teaching me, and she really pushed me to do a voice.
Like today?
Yeah.
She wanted you to do.
She thinks I'm ready to do like do a sentence, to give it a little sneak peek. I could feel like myself by like presenting the way I wanted to, growing my hair out, but I would look back when because I'm a YouTuber, I get recorded a lot.
Yeah.
I would look back and I would be like, that's me. And then my voice, I would open my mouth and I'd be like, that's not me.
Do you want to say a sentence, or do you want to talk us through the different types of things that go into the voice?
I'm gonna say a sentence, but I'll kind of also show you like the process I have to do.
Yeah, and I think this will be the first time many people watching this will have ever seen the thought process behind it.
So I'm in a newer stage. I've only been going for a little bit, so it's easier for me to find that space, that feminine voice, by doing a warm-up. It sounds goofy. Whenever I do it at home, I make sure all my doors are locked and nobody's home.
So now you're gonna do it on camera?
So now I'm gonna do it on camera.
Now
for
there's
everybody.
millions of people watching.
I know, my voice instructor encouraged me. It won't sound perfect. It probably will get picked on a little bit, but that's kind of what I like doing, is showing people the the rawness of it. You ready for the voice?
I'm ready, if you are.
Oh gosh, we might have to do a couple of takes.
That's fine, that's fine.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. Here it goes.
Sure.
Hey, Anthony, congratulations on buying Smosh.
Thank
Is that
you.
good?
You know, it makes me so sad. I think it's important to point out, so Anthony, right, is the guy that's interviewing him. If you're just listening, you may not have seen it, but I think it is important to pause and point out, what is the reaction, even of this interviewer who seems very supportive through this whole thing? His immediate reaction is laughter. And I don't even think he realized he did it. I don't even think he realized, I'm laughing at this imaginative voice, this voice that was just created out of nowhere. I'm not even sure. And in another context, like a Monty Python context or a comedy context, it would be funny, because it is funny and it is laughable. Now, I'm not laughing at Chris because sadly he's really confused and there's obviously a lot going on here, but trying to change your voice in that way, where you have to like kind of sing and then find the tone for the fake voice that you're going to do to try to pretend to be a woman. I mean, that's kind of laughable because it's not real. It's so clearly not real. And I don't know if either of them even see it. I think accidentally the interviewer, Anthony, understood how not real it is because his first reaction is laughter, because it's sad. Like either you laugh or you cry. It's one of those moments. And I'm sad. I'm sad for this. I'm sad for Chris. I'm sad for his family. I'm sad because he was so unhappy for so long, and now he's pursuing this happiness, this joy, this peace. But those things can't be found in changing your hair, changing your clothes, changing your makeup, or changing your voice. They're not going to be found in that. Not to mention all of these chemicals, all of these hormones, whatever surgeries he has done or has planned. it's sad because for him, this is not going to make him happy. And this is where we have to understand this from a Christian perspective. And again, I'm not just dumping on Chris with a K or Chris with a CH. I'm really sad for him. I'm really sad for his family, his friends, for his son, who is going to now grow up and wonder what is going on with my dad. And he will, because sons need fathers. And they need fathers to be certain things, because fathers are designed to be certain things. And God made fathers to be certain things. This is just the reality of it, biologically, physically, spiritually. This is the real world. But it's sad when people like this say, well, the real world is hard, so I don't want to deal with it anymore. And this is how I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to pretend I'm not a boy anymore. I'm going to pretend I'm a girl. And that's going to solve all my problems. And it's sad for me because it's not. I hope and I do pray that Chris finds out soon and repents and finds Jesus, because the longer and the further he goes down this road, the more and more consequences are going to come out of it. And that does make me sad. I was thinking about this, thinking about verses to kind of close with, and I was thinking about talking about John, and when John is talking and showing the story of Jesus and the woman at the well. It's one of my favorites for sure. But then there's also this John 6:35 where Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall not thirst. And I think that's a good statement from Jesus. I think it's a good reminder that we, all of us, try to fill ourselves up with all kinds of things in life, with money and power and prestige and all manner of things. We try to fill our lives up. But the reality is they just won't. They won't fill us up. They can't, because they're not designed to. The only thing that can actually fill us is Jesus himself, the bread of life, the one that satisfies our hunger and our thirst. And even before that, when God was preparing the way for Jesus, and you hear from the psalmist, Psalm 107:9, for he satisfies the longing soul, and the hungry soul he fills with good things. Talking about God, specifically, even I would say talking about Jesus. And the reality is, this is the only thing that satisfies. And then I'll end with this one more, because I think this one is important, and it helps us understand the pull that we have, that Chris succumbed to, and many of us feel and maybe sometimes even get pulled into, because this world is attractive, and this world has things that we like and that we want to be filled with or fill our lives with. But again, the reality is these things will not satisfy. So the writer says, do not love the world. Do not love the things of the world. Anybody who loves the world does not love the Father. For all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of this world. And as this world passes away, the lust of it, but the will of God, and he who does the will of the God, I'm sorry, I can't read this right. The lust of it, he who does the will of God abides forever. Sorry, got a little tongue-tied there. This is the important thing. It's that we need to do God's will. We need to follow after God. This first thing that John tells us is, if anybody loves the world, the love for God, the Father, is not in him. Verse 15. In other words, the reason you shouldn't love the world is that you can't love the world and God. This is the reality. This is the reality that we have to understand, and that we see this poor, young, confused man get caught up in. He got rid of his family, got rid of his wife, got rid of his kid, because he wanted to fill himself up with the world. But the world is not going to fill him up. And this is, again, I can't judge him because I don't know where he is spiritually. I don't know what he understands or doesn't understand from a Christian perspective, but I can talk to you. And we can talk about this, and we can understand that when you love the world, that pushes out the love for God. But when you love God, that pushes out the love for the world. They cannot live in the same place at the same time. They cannot live in the same heart at the same time. And we have to understand that. And we have to understand that when we see things like this, it is the world winning. It is the world taking over, and God, the things of morality, the things of reality being pushed out. This is just the same thing that we hear in Matthew 6. No one can serve two masters. Jesus tells us either he'll hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Sure, he's talking about money and God there, but the same thing is true here. You cannot love the things of the world and love God. You just can't. Your heart is not big enough to handle it. And yet, this world tricks you. The devil tricks you. This is the oldest thing in the world, literally, when the devil says, did God really say? Can you not have this thing and have God too? I mean, this is all the way back to the Garden of Eden. When Satan tempts Eve, he says, hey, I know you're not supposed to have that fruit, but I think you can have that fruit and still have this relationship with God. He gives you that trick. He's still doing the same trick today, saying, hey, you can have the things of the world and also have God. It's not possible. John tells us it's not possible. Matthew tells us it's not possible. And bigger than that, Jesus tells you it is not possible. You have to choose one. I hope that you choose God. I hope that you choose Jesus. I hope that you don't go down paths like this poor guy did. And again, we need to have compassion for him. We need to have compassion for his family. We need to have compassion for anyone who's struggling with this. I do. It really is sad and it really hurts. And that's why I feel the need to talk about this. I will probably get in trouble at some point for talking about these things because you're not allowed in culture to talk about these things. You're not allowed to share real truth. We saw that with this lady in the Oregon hospital. If you share real things on truth like this, the culture's not going to like it. The world is not going to like it. The devil is certainly not going to like it. But we know that we serve a God that's bigger. So I, for one, am going to keep talking about these things until God takes the breath from my lungs, because we need to have courage. We need to live as if Jesus really is who he says he is. In Matthew 28, when he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to him now, and therefore we go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, making disciples of all nations. I mean, these are the things that we're called to do. We're told to do. We have to do. And in order to do that, we have to say true things. We cannot water down the gospel and say, love is love. Love wins. There's not really a hell. You can just do whatever you want. It's going to be fine. That's not the gospel. The gospel is you're messed up. I'm messed up. I can't do it on my own. You can't do it on your own. The only good news is that someone went before us, Jesus, and did it for us. That's the thing that we have to rest on consistently and constantly, because where else is there hope in this world but Jesus? I hope that you continue to hold on to him with all of your heart and soul and mind and strength. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, keep the faith. I hope this has been helpful for you, and if it has, you can hit the like button, the subscribe button, the share button, leave a review, send it to a friend if it's helpful. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.